What's going on, everyone? Darkside Phil here, and welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series, where you can get maximum truth and minimum bullshit when it comes to my feelings on the latest releases. And today we're going to talk about a game that I actually had the opportunity to play the demo of fairly early on. I believe it was like a month and a half before the game had ever come out. And at that point, it was kind of hard to really put your finger on what this game was going to be. It seemed like a really unique plot, some interesting gameplay elements, but would that save it from being just a generic third-person shooter? Well, I've now played through the entire campaign as well as played a little bit of the multiplayer of the game, and I'm here to give you my feelings. Today we're talking about Spec Ops: The Line, and another game that fell on the floor, but Spec Ops: The Line for the Xbox 360. So what is the premise of Spec Ops: The Line? You are part of Delta Squad, a three-man team that was sent into Dubai after a calamitous sandstorm has basically destroyed the entire area. And think of Apocalypse Now, okay? It's so bad that all control has been lost. There was actually a 33rd Infantry unit that was sent in to try to evacuate this area, led by someone, I think his name was Colonel Conrad, it's either General or Colonel Conrad, who I guess was previously a war hero, and nothing's been heard from these guys. It's almost as if no one knows what's going on in Dubai. Is there martial law? You know, what happened to the civilians? What happened to the 33rd Infantry Unit? And so, the story begins with Delta Squad going in, trying to figure out what's going on. Now, there will be a couple plot spoilers, because it is necessary to actually explain to you what actually happens in the game. Basically, there is martial law. Basically, the 33rd Infantry Unit has kind of flipped, and now they are controlling Dubai themselves, and basically kind of just like taking civilians wherever they want, doing whatever they want with this place's resources. And the CIA comes in to try to retake control, and it basically creates almost a turf war between the 33rd, the people who actually live in Dubai, and the CIA. So you as Delta Squad are kind of an outside unit who really don't have allegiance with any of the people in Dubai, and there's an ongoing mystery going on of what happened to Conrad, what really happened here, how did they lose control, how did so many people die in the sandstorm, why wasn't it properly evacuated? Now when I say I draw a comparison to Apocalypse Now, I really do, because it's that kind of almost we've completely lost control, it's the end of the world, everything is chaotic atmosphere in Dubai. But one thing I want to say about Spec Ops: The Line, this game is not for kids, alright? Now I know a lot of people say, oh, it's a mature rated game, it's like Call of Duty, that game's for kids, right? Kids play that. This game is an insanely, like, really mature rated content. We're talking lots of gore, profanity, some crazy morality decisions that are just like, there's no right or wrong way to know what to do. And some things that lead to some pretty gruesome happenings in the game. I mean, disgusting, gruesome things. I would not let I wouldn't even let like a teenager play this game. It's that bad. You know, unless you're 18, of course. Actually, mature rating is 17. I didn't even know that. I guess it's kind of like a rated R movie. So, Spec Ops: The Line. Primarily, what will you be doing in this game? You will be going through areas in Dubai, mostly deserted, but have been infiltrated either, like I said, by different factions, the CIA, the 33rd, and you will be trying to figure out exactly what's going on. You will be doing cover-based shooting gameplay, just extremely similar, I want to say, to like Uncharted, to Gears of War. It's not exactly like anything you've played before. Some of the unique mechanics of the game are that you can actually order your squad to do things. You can tell them to focus in on a certain enemy, and they will actually try to take out that enemy for you if you're, you know, basically you're undercover and you're being held down. If you also are unable to move because you're being shot from different directions, you can order your squad to throw flashbangs, which will stun everyone, and then you have the ability to obviously get out of cover. There's going to be some on-rail shooter style stuff during the course of the game. There's going to be some cool set pieces where a lot of sand mechanics come into play in this game, where because there was such a bad sandstorm, basically a lot of the buildings are completely surrounded by sand, and when you're inside you can shoot out the walls or windows and the sand will slide in, killing enemies. So that's some of the uniqueness of the game. I do have to say that the graphics are a little bit, excuse me, a little bit above and beyond. A lot of the times being outside in the middle of the desert, or being high up on a building looking down at Dubai from thousands of feet. I mean, it's really cool. It really is interesting, the graphic design of the game. It's definitely not your typical third-person shooter locale-wise, okay? So really what ends up happening during the course of the game, as you're going from point A to point B, they're trying to figure out, gee, we have to find out where the 33rd is, we have to find out what's going on with the CIA, maybe we have to save a particular CIA agent. You're going to be forced with certain morality choices. For example, there's one point where you have to decide, I'm either going to be aggressive and try to save the CIA agent that it looks like might be executed, or I'm going to be more conservative and hang back because they're actually holding hostages at the same time, and you know that if you try to save the CIA agent, they may execute the hostages. Some other morality choices. Two people hanging, and you have to choose which one of them you want to kill, and given a situation, you explain that one of them is like a thief and one of them is a murderer, and who do you want to kill? If you don't kill them, you get attacked. So there's different kinds of these morality choices throughout the course of the game, each of which will either give you a different trophy or achievement, and then it actually adds some replayability because you might want to go back and replay the same stages, do the opposite choice, and see how that affects the characters and the things that are going along in the game. Your squad in itself is unique because certain squad members will want to do one thing while certain squad members will want to do the other thing in certain situations, and therefore, you know, you have to decide, you know, who do you really side with over the course of the game. So that's primarily the campaign of the game. The gameplay is pretty fun, and I have to say there are some points where there's high highs. If you're doing a really exciting set piece, or there's at one point where you're hanging off a truck using a grenade launcher shooting dudes, which is gruesome but fun at the same time. That kind of stuff is pretty interesting. But there are going to be those stretches of the game that I like to call, they have Uncharted syndrome, okay? And what I mean when I call it that is that it's typical third-person shooter gameplay where it's like, here comes 10 dudes running at you, and you, against all odds, have to take out those 10 dudes. Once they're dead, uh-oh, here comes wave number 2. 10 more dudes. You have to take those guys out. Uh-oh, then here comes a big, powerful tank dude with heavy armor you have to take out, and then maybe 1 or 2 more guys, and then finally it's over. It's just like wave after wave after wave of repetitive enemies, and at some points of the game it can really be annoying because you might be almost out of ammo if you aren't out of ammo. Sometimes your squad mates are disabled, so they get shot. You have to go heal them in a timely manner. If you don't, they die, and then obviously the game can't progress. So it's kind of annoying, especially when some of the AI is annoying. You'll have your squad will run out and do absolutely nothing unless you order them to. So the good news is, yes, you can order them to do stuff, and they'll usually do something useful, but sometimes they just wander out and get killed by themselves. Sometimes you'll order them to kill a guy, and you're like, well, I wish he would do it undercover. But no, instead he jumps out of cover, runs out into the open, starts shooting this one guy, so obviously he becomes an open target for everyone else. So some of the AI can really be annoying at times. And the fact that there is these really repetitive wave after wave after wave of enemies a la Uncharted, which is pretty much still the #1 complaint about the Uncharted games, that keeps happening, as a way to artificially enhance the difficulty. I mean, where are all these fucking people coming from? You know what I mean? Where were the 40 dudes hiding that when the first 10 were attacking, they didn't hear anything, and all of a sudden they show up later? It doesn't really make any sense. It's really confusing and just, it's annoying. We have to fight wave after wave after wave after wave of these enemies, okay? That being said, the game does some things interestingly right. For example, the story is very unique. I have not played another third-person shooter that has a story quite this interesting for different reasons. Number one, because of some of the gruesome things that happen in the game that you just are not expecting. They throw you for a loop. Number two, the game has an amazing twist ending that I'm not going to spoil for anyone, but it really is worth it to hang in there and beat the game and find out what's really going on in Dubai. And number three, and how often can you say this about a third-person shooter, this game has 4 different endings. That's right, similar to Mass Effect 3, you can do 4 different choices at the end of the game that all amount to completely different things. Now again, I don't want to spoil in this review what those are, but if you do want to see all 4 of the interesting endings, including one that it's not actually apparent that this could be a choice, but once you figure it out, it's extra gruesome compared to some of the other stuff that's happened in the game. It's really fucked up and you get a cool ending cutscene for it. I did them all in my playthrough, so definitely check out the ending of my Spec Ops The Line playthrough if you want to see all 4 of the interesting endings of the game, with the actual plot twist at the end of the game as well. But the game is a mindfuck. When you beat it, you're just left sitting there like, holy fuck. I feel like I just watched one of those, movies about Vietnam that's so crazy about the horrors of war and how it can fuck up people's heads and fuck with people's minds, that you're really left with a resounding feeling that war is just horrible. And it's not something you ever want to be involved in. And in that case, it's very unique. That being said, the campaign of the game is only 6.5 hours long, and compared to other, better third-person shooters like Gears of War, like Uncharted, that could be a very big disappointment for a lot of people, okay? Now, the multiplayer of Spec Ops: The Line is kind of hit or miss, and the reason I say that is, first of all, only 8 players in a match, which in this day and age, only 8 players in a match is actually a rarity. Most games you can do up to like 16, sometimes 12, some games are even going up to 32. This one decides to keep it small. The uniqueness of the multiplayer is that the maps of the multiplayer are nothing like I've ever played in another third-person shooter game. I'll be honest with everyone. A lot of the maps have multi-tiers, so there's a museum that has 3 to 4 floors where you can either go up and down staircases, use zip lines, or drop through holes to attack people either above or below you. Around this museum are walls and windows that, if you shoot them, sand will come in and instantly kill someone who's standing right next to it. So it really is different. It's more about environmental hazards and knowing the maps and placement than a lot of other third-person shooters. The other map that I played on was like three building skyscrapers with, again, multiple floors all connected by different pathways. And so you could be on any of the 3 or 4 floors on it, sniping people. You get people sneak up behind you. In fact, I actually snuck up. There was one tower that had like the whole enemy team in it, 5 people. I killed them all. I was like, boom, boom, boom. I take that back, 4 people, because there's only 4 people on a team. I went boom, 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 boom. Executed the whole enemy team because I snuck up behind them and they weren't expecting it. So in that regard, I think the maps are the most interesting part of the multiplayer. But it's standard fare, cover-based. You can pick different loadouts, you can pick different perks and things that you unlock as you gain experience while you kill people. It's pretty much more of the same of these third-person shooter games. It's not super interesting. In addition to that, very limited game modes. You've got deathmatch, you've got team deathmatch. You've got a mode where there are different areas where you have to attack, and once you destroy all 3 of these areas, one final high-value target opens up. You have to destroy that using either bullets or explosives or whatever, and then you win the match. There are 2 other game modes but I never got to play them, because even though I unlocked them, I tried to play them and no one was playing them. I would just sit there at the lobby like this, waiting and waiting, and I was the only person in the match, and I could never find anyone to play these game modes. So unfortunately, even though the game is new and I'm playing it launch week, here we are, the first weekend after the game's release, and honestly, no one's really playing it. The only thing that people were playing were deathmatch, okay, team deathmatch. So it is interesting. You will get some more gameplay out of the game if you want to play like a third-person shooter, team deathmatch style with some really interesting map mechanics. Outside of that, it really doesn't do anything unique. I'm not saying by any means that the multiplayer is bad. I'm just saying it's not amazing, and even though it will add to the replayability and the amount of time that you get out of the game, it's not a strong selling point, let's put it that way. So you're talking a 6.5 hour campaign with some annoying parts, but some interesting parts. Sometimes you get high highs where you're doing a cool set piece and there's a cool morality choice or plot twist that you weren't expecting. Then you get low lows when you get to the points where it's really repetitive gameplay, wave after wave of really difficult enemies. Your stupid teammates aren't helping you, they're running out and getting killed like assholes. Some of the checkpoints also are a little bit on the annoying side. I have to say about 75% of the time the checkpoints were really good, but 25% of the time there would be a checkpoint where you have to replay a certain amount, like 3, 4, 5 minutes of gameplay to get back to the point where you died, and then it's kind of trial and error trying to figure out, gee, where are the enemies going to come from? All of a sudden an enemy might flank you, and if you don't know that, you die, and you have to replay 4 minutes of gameplay to get back there and then expect him to come and kill him before he can kill you. The selling point of this game by far is the story. So if you're into third-person shooters and you want a really unique, interesting, adult-themed, again, Apocalypse Now style story, this game is for you. And I wouldn't say I'd say don't be afraid to buy it, simply because it is 6.5 hours as a campaign. Plus, there's 4 endings. There is some replayability at the end of the game. There's definitely incentive to replay the campaign a second time to pick the opposite morality choice that you picked in certain situations and see how that affects not only what's going on with the characters and the plot, but also to unlock the achievements and trophies that you didn't unlock the first time through. And there's also replayability with the multiplayer, even though it's not massively unique. I do like the maps, that they are a lot varied from other third-person shooter games. On the flip side, it's a $60 retail release and 6.5-hour campaign plus maybe a couple hours online, unless you really get hooked and you want to play it more. Is it really worth $60? And of course, you have to weigh and balance the amount of quality that you're going to get with the amount of money that you spend. So, all things considered, Spec Ops: The Line, a unique campaign, some uniqueness to some of the gameplay. Unfortunately, a lot of repetitive standard third-person shooter fare that really drives it down. In fact, during my playthrough, I noticed that the views weren't very high. And when I actually asked my viewer audience what was going on, they said, "We're loving the plot, but there are just entire lengths of the game, 10, 20 minutes at a time where you're doing repetitive third-person shooter gameplay that's just boring as hell, and it's hard to keep attention." So a lot of people said, we're going to watch the playthrough over time, but it's not something that I could sit there for hours on end watching because I just don't like a lot of the gameplay. So that being said, that's pretty much exactly what it is. I actually think that Spec Ops: The Line is probably a really good candidate to make a movie out of. I think that this is kind of a game that could translate well into a really gruesome Apocalypse Now style movie, and I think that it could do really well. It is important to note Nolan North is the main character in this game. He does the voice acting for the main character Walker, and so if you like Nolan North, you're probably going to like the voice acting in the game. I just wanted to throw that out there. A lot of people ask me why I don't mention certain voice actors and stuff at periods of time, so I just want to toss that out. Yeah, it's a third-person shooter, and it has Nolan North as the main character, so obviously it's going to draw parallels with Uncharted. So all things considered, I'm going to actually recommend Spec Ops: The Line to people who want a really unique adult-themed story, might want to replay the game once or twice, so there is some replayability value there, and also some okay online multiplayer. I'm not going to recommend it to anyone who's looking for some kind of unique gameplay experience or anything like that, because a lot of it is just standard third-person shooter fare. The only difference being you can order your squad to do certain things, but sometimes that can be wonky. I'm going to give Spec Ops: The Line a 7.25. It's better than the average third-person shooter by far. It definitely doesn't reach the epic heights of games like Uncharted or anything like that, but it does have some unique twists and a really good story that's worth experiencing. I would say if you like third-person shooters, you might want to give it a rent. If you really want to, experience the game and replay it multiple times, maybe you want to buy it, but it's not something that I would say rush out to get. It's not a must-purchase. An interesting game, but definitely, not anything that's like breaking new ground. Let's put it that way. Alright, so that's it for the Hateful Truth this time around. I hope that you've found this review informative, that now you know whether or not you'd like to check out this game. And that's pretty much it. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and I will see you next time on the Hateful Truth. Peace.